start with verse 21. Um, it's prophecy is what we're dealing with right now. And as we go through this, we're going to get some more prophecy. Isaiah is now definitely a man of God, and he's going to tell it like it is. So we'll start with verse 27. And it said 21, excuse me. I'm looking down. I'm like, okay, my bifocals aren't working.
You're cute.
Yeah. And it shall come to pass in that day that a man shall nourish a young cow and 2 sheep. Now, that's a pretty unusual statement, right? And that day always means what? It's a specified time. In the previous verse, in the time and the judgments, that should be brought upon the land by the Egyptians and the Assyrians. It means when they're attacked, right? And this is in the future. A man shall nourish. In the Hebrew, it said make to live. That's what nourishment, to make, shall nourish. Or he shall own or feed.
And
right?
mine says keep alive.
Keep alive, right? Make to live, keep alive, right? And a young cow, the Hebrew denotes a heifer that gives milk. The state which is denoted by this is that of great poverty. If a man only owned 1 cow, right, and 1 milk cow, he was in poverty, and he needed to, because he couldn't even breed,
right,
and get extra cattle.
Yeah, so he
right?
either eats,
right,
or he has milk,
right,
or he's able to breed, but he can only breed with a neighbor.
Yes, and hopefully they have a bull, and he's not getting any milk, right? So it's definitely a poor state, is what it is, a poor state of affairs. Is that right? And 2 sheep. Well, to here it seems to be used to denote a very small number. A man that is used for generality of people would be so reduced as to be able to purchase and keep no more. Now, why would they keep sheep?
For milk.
Yeah, also
Well, and their wool.
and their wool for clothing, right? They weave their own
And
clothing.
blankets.
Not going to make a lot of clothes with 2 sheep. It's going to have to save it up
You
for a
only
couple
shear them, what, once a year?
once a year, right?
You want the lanolin in them.
Right, to oil your leathers and keep those good, right? But also they use sheep to keep the orchards and the fields groomed. Well, they don't even have enough to groom the orchards, and the orchards are drying up, so they can't keep the sheep there to feed them, so they can't own them. So they either have to butcher them and keep 2, right? And some people do like sheep's milk and stuff like that, but it's just a very poor state is what it's trying to get across, okay? Now, instead of being engaged in agriculture, as most of these people would have been, right, with the orchards and the vineyards, right, possessing great resources in that time, a man should depend for the subsistence of his family, of himself and his family, and on what a single cow and 2 sheep would yield is not very good. He's not going to keep his family fed. It's going to be some really, what they call tighten the belt up. Doing without is basically, he wouldn't even be able to buy bread and stuff
And they have nothing to trade with them at that point.
at that point. So this is, Isaiah is really trying to get it across to these people at the level of the devastation that's coming.
The rationing
He's
and
trying,
everything.
he's trying to get it across to them. And so verse 22, it says, and it shall come to pass for the abundance of milk that they shall give, he shall eat butter. For butter and honey shall every one eat that is left in the land. Now, that's kind of a, we'll talk about in a minute, but when it says it shall come to pass, it means it's already been decided by God. It's already promised, it's coming, right?
Because it says shall, number 1.
It shall, right. And then here again we hear Isaiah proclaim that God has promised and it will be done, period. There's no way you guys are getting out of this one, right? Very much like the verily, verily that Christ uses in the New Testament, right? So if you hear, and it shall come to pass, verily, verily, that's a double whammy. And it actually is in the Bible in 2 places. And we'll talk, that's just something I looked up because I was going across this.
Wow.
I'm like, wow, it was.
That's really
Yeah, it's not good.
emphasizing.
And it's in Revelations. But anyway.
Oh, of course, I would expect it to be there.
Right. Anyway, okay. So, for the abundance of milk that they shall give, because they shall have excellent and large pastures, normally, right? By reason of the great scarcity of cattle. formerly their lands were oftentimes overstocked with cattle. It's time, they remember the milk and honey? They talked about the promised land? That's the reference. There was a time that they had more than they could ever use.
So,
It's-
is he kind of like restored their land?
He's gonna devastate it first, but then it will come back. The people won't right away, but the land will recover faster than we will. Okay, so he's trying to get it across to them that they had abundance of milk once. They actually sold milk and butter, and they sold it to travelers and to Egypt and to different places, right? Now they can't even raise enough cattle to produce more than what they can consume, right? And they shall eat butter. Due to the overabundance of milk, these cattle, right, or these are obviously not beefsteaks, they're dairy cattle, right? And no one to consume it or buy it, they had to make more than enough butter. It's the only way you can store milk. They didn't have refrigerators, right?
And use
Butter
the
can be stored.
buttermilk- Use the buttermilk in something, you can consume that right away.
Right away, right. But if they make butter,
Yeah, butter can sit on the counter.
yeah, you can wrap it in cheesecloth or something, or cloth, and it can stay for months. If you in the old days, my family, they would dig a hole in the ground, and they would wet the ground, and then they put a feed sack or a tow sack in the ground, and then they would put their containers of butter in the ground and bury it.
So they must have had salt then, right? If they're making butter?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, most
Well,
butter,
salt just changes
it's
the color
color.
of it.
That's all it does.
I thought it helped preserve it.
Nope.
Nope.
Butter's
It's
almost
just to
like a
change
white.
the color
isn't
of
it?
it.
Yes, white.
Yeah.
I know, because we used to make our own.
Yeah, it's a white
Cheese,
color.
we
It's
used to
not,
make our own
yellow
butter.
makes salt makes
Everybody
it turn
dairy.
yellow. It's from the
Okay.
potassium, and it turns it yellow. Remember potassium, banana, butter. It's the potassium and the salt. Okay.
Okay.
But it would last 3, 4, 5, 6 months in the ground like that, and you could go dig it up, and you pull those containers out, and the outer containers, the wrappings would come off.
Yeah, 'cause it's like 70-something degrees.
In the ground, it stayed, that
Like
perfect.
some little mini
Those
refrigerator.
mini refrigerators. And if you dug the hole next to a stream or a spring,
Be even
it
better.
would even cooler.
Like a root cellar.
Yeah, like a root cellar, exactly the same principle, right? So, then we had on the property that we had back there, we had a spring coming out of the ground. So it was very common to see a hole dug, you know? You knew grandma had put something in there to preserve it, right? All right, butter and honey became the staple food of the country. Normally, it was only eaten as a delicacy along with bread and the flesh of meat, and that's the Genesis.
I get that one.
18:8.
He then brought some curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared and set these before them. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree.
That's
So curds would have been cottage cheese.
like the cottage
Yeah.
cheese, yes, right?
They let it curdle.
But they always served it with the meat.
Curds
Right.
away.
Curds away, right?
So
There
I
you go.
have Samuel,
Yeah.
2 Samuel 17:29.
Mm-hmm.
And honey and butter and sheep and cheese of the herd for David, and for the people that were with him to eat. For they said, the people are hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, David survived.
And they were hungry, so that was the best that they could do for them.
Yes, because that's what they had extra.
That's what they had extra.
Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't take away from their families, and you could survive on those 3 things right there, right?
So did the sheep, can you drink sheep's milk?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like goat's milk?
It's like goat's milk, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the same thing. You can make butter out of it. It has a fat content to it. So what we're just seeing is a similar thing, because we know in David's time, he totally lived off the butter, not butter, but the honey and the water in the caves when he was fighting with Saul, right? And it sustained his men. And he got bread from the priest at one of the synagogues, if you remember that one.
Well, with that content would have been a protein, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
I mean, you need so much protein.
right, especially on fighting men, right? They need the protein, but the honey would be an anesthetic. They would heal their wounds with it. They could eat it. for energy,
Raw honey,
and it would,
non-processed.
Right.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
they took it out of the hives.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that
So it
was,
probably wasn't even overly sweet then. Well, it might have been.
Oh, it's sweet right out of the hives.
Is it?
yeah. But it depends on what the bees are harvesting. Also makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the flavor.
The flavor.
Yeah,
So-
that's why they say when you have allergies to something,
Mhm.
if you eat honey that
In the local
is
area.
local, like he has issues with hay,
Mhm.
alfalfa. If you get honey that has been
Alfalfa.
harvested from the alfalfa fields,
Mm.
then a teaspoon of that every day will help
Which is hard to
build up
find
his
in
immunity.
Yeah.
No.
Right, especially the blue, they call it blue bloom.
Around here, I use mesquite honey.
I know,
Like
right?
going off
No.
of honey.
Yeah, so butter and honey are mentioned for another two reasons, right? As mean and vulgar food being very common in those parts, which means not mean and vulgar, but it's just they have so much of it.
Prevalent.
It's like macaroni and cheese.
Yes, exactly, right? Which are opposed to the flesh
Which I
and the
happen
corn.
to like, by the way.
Yeah, well, because they were used to eating what? Beef and corn and meals.
Steak.
Steak and other excellent fruits of the earth, right? Wherewith the land formerly abounded with it, right? So their diet had changed according to what they could grow and what they had.
Mhm.
Well, now that's all been taken away, right? It's going to be taken away. It's not taken away yet, but it's going to be taken away, right? And the second was, it was a very good and pleasant food, which the poor sort had formerly used to sell. They used to sell it, right? That's how they made income. Now the poor can't even sell it.
They have to eat it. And
So-
they have to eat it sparingly.
So they have no extra resources for anything, right? The poor always suffer when you have a downturn in the economy.
Mhm.
That's what's going to
That's the
happen,
truth.
right? Now the land was so destitute of people that there were none to whom they could sell them. They didn't even have travelers coming through because the Assyrian army would control the roads.
Right, who would want to go mess with them?
Right. Yeah.
Too much drama to deal with.
Right. All right. So that's a little bit of the preview that he's trying to give them. And then verse 23 says, "And it shall come to pass in that day." Now this is a little different. When it says it shall come to pass, it means it's already been decided.
Mhm.
In that day means a specific time period, right? That every place shall be where there were 1,000 vines at 1,000 silverlings, it shall even be for briars and thorns. So, by silverlings, our translator means pieces of silver. So, the profit from those 1,000 vines made the people rich with silver.
Mm-hmm.
They sold the wine, they sold the grapes. Their cattle were grazing on everything else around it, right? So they had fat cattle, they had extra produce. They were making money, right?
To buy stuff that they couldn't raise yet.
Right.
Yeah.
It is. It may either 1,000 vines worth of that amount, or 1,000 vines rented at that sum annually. A lot of these guys would lease their property out to poor people to work it, so that they would have access to food and also a little bit. But some of these bigger groups, the ones that made the wines for the kings and things, they would buy up whole vineyards and pay silver for it, and all you had to do was maintain it.
Wow.
Right? Well, it's called sharecropping.
Yeah.
Right? And or the big conglomerates in the Midwest right now, they bought up all the small farms. They run hundreds of, combines and tractors and things like that, but the small farmer can't make it. Right? So this is what they're talking about basically. Right? All right. In the Song of Solomon 8:11, did you look that one up? She's in there.
Solomon had a vineyard in Baal
Yeah.
Hammon.
Baal Hammon, right?
He let out his vineyard to tenants. Each was to bring for its fruit 1,000 shekels of silver.
Wow. That's a lot of money in that time period. So he was drawing in some amazing money from those places. Right? Now he said, "It shall be even be for briars and thorns, for the want of lack of persons to stock the ground and cultivate it." If you don't have the people there to work the property, what happens to it? It gets overrun.
Tumbleweeds.
Right, it's grown full of weeds, right? We've seen that around here, right?
Yeah.
Right. Now 24 says, "With arrows and with bows shall men come thither, because all the land shall become briars and thorns." Now, at first I thought, wow, they're going to they're going to be attacked with bows and arrows here, but it wasn't. It means the arrows with bows shall men come thither. It's to hunt, and also for fear of wild beasts, serpents, and scorpions. Once that starts growing up, what happens when you get scrub brush and stuff up against your house? You get mice, you get scorpions, then you get mice, and then you get snakes, and then it's a cycle.
Yeah.
The food chain. Well, you don't want that in your area, right? You clean your property off around your house and stuff like that, right? Well, this is all grown up. There's no one to clean the properties. There's no one to trim it back. There's no one trimming the vines, you know. So it's gonna get bad, right? Okay, and then the vines become briars and thorns. It provides cover with among which such creatures, such sort of men would hide themselves. So now they even got this problem of not just the armies that devastate them. Now they got thieves and murderers coming in to the area. So everybody's going to have to carry a weapon to protect themselves and their family just to survive. Anytime you have a devastation, a collapse of an economy, or the loss of men in an area, that's the first place the thieves and the con men come.
Easy pickings.
Easy pickings, right? They got no resistance, right? And they will attack you and take everything you got. They don't care.
Sounds like Australia. As soon as they took all the guns,
Yeah.
crime was 500% because the criminals knew they couldn't defend themselves.
Right.
And it was daylight robberies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. So, verse 25 is the last verse on this, right?
Yep.
And on the hills that shall be digged with the mattock, there shall not come thither the fear of briars and thorns, but it shall be for the sending forth of oxen and for the treading of lesser cattle. Now, when it says on the hills that shall be digged, better said that are digged, but that used to be digged with the hoe. The picture of devastation is completed. They can't even keep up with it. No matter if you had the mattock is the hoe, is it called a mattock? It's a wide blade hoe that you see. Sometimes they had a point on the other end. It was for knocking out rocks and then digging the soil and getting the weeds out and stuff like that. So it's a picture of devastation. He says even to that point they won't be taken care of. All right. So there not shall come thither the fear of briars and thorns. This was where thorns and briars used to not grow.
Right.
It's going to be everywhere. It's not. It's going to be in the valleys or in the wild areas. It's going to be in every area, even around your homes.
Like
Kind
this
of like the stinkweed.
Yes, like this stinkweed, right? The stink nettle. They call it the stink nettle.
that happened here.
Right?
And see it this year too.
In some places, yeah.
Not as bad as last year.
Nope.
But
Oh
yeah.
gosh.
Right.
It was the only thing that saved us from COVID.
So there was a fear of danger of being overrun with these briars and thorns. You guys been back in the Midwest or Colorado, where they get the climbing rose bushes or the vining roses? Have you seen those that cover a whole hillside? Or the ivy?
No, we got the vine.
Vines.
Cat's claw.
They
Cat's
kill
claw.
and they kill the trees.
Yes.
They kill the
They
timber.
smother everything. That's what's going to occur here. Same exact thing. So you got the picture.
Yep.
It's just if you don't hack it back, it will take over.
Briar
It'll-
patches do too. Oh yeah, briar patches.
Briar
is
patches.
horrible.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that went over the princess's castle that the
blackberries,
prince had to go through
Yes.
to kiss the princess.
Yes.
These were
Right.
briar.
Okay, so these were thorns and briars that used not to grow, where there was fear of danger of being overrun with them, as the vineyards in the valleys and the Champagne country. Ooh. So it was
Champagne,
not
would
just
that be a special type of
yeah,
grape?
grape. It's a white grape.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a white
Okay.
specialty grape. They used to be as big as a plum on the vine. They used to be huge, about that big.
Plums are pretty big. I
Yeah,
was
no,
just gonna
about
say,
that big.
yeah.
That was a grape.
Wow.
Yeah, specialty grapes.
Yeah.
They're very highly prized. So that would have been what they're saying there. It goes from the valleys, which is where the poor people would work, to the top, where the champagne grapes were. It's going to cover both all levels, right? So it's to help you understand. Okay. Now for the sending forth of oxen and for the treading of lesser cattle, it would be that these animals would be the only ones who could get through it. Oxen with their tough skin,
Yeah.
they plow through it, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever see what a whitetail can go through?
Yeah, it does.
Crawling.
Right.
There are
And that's the
other
lesser
that can
animals,
get
by the
through,
way.
yes.
The
Yeah.
deer,
Yeah.
they can go through that.
Oh, yeah.
The lesser animals can
Yeah.
go through it, but a man couldn't go through it. We had to help Bob Woods down here one time in Harquahala Valley. He had 7, one bull and four cows and the calves got into the mesquite trees, his 40-acre mesquite trees, and they would jump and go through those briars. I mean, it's 40 acres of nothing. You couldn't get a horse through it, right? And they would go right on through that and then jump the fence and go into the fields and eat the hay and the corn and stuff. And as soon as you got there, they'd jump back over the fence and go back in. We finally had we got on one end and create enough noise to spook them, so they go out the other end, right? And 2 of the guys brought horses that had full leather gear on the front of them, and they just pushed straight through to get them out so we could catch them. And then one of them, that bull had been in there almost 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah, he was not a nice one to play with. So that's what they're going to be facing. All right. I don't know about you, but that's not a good day. So, pretty amazing if you think about it. Actually, I've lived and seen some of that. So here's the next chapter. Dun, dun, dun. I got a chance. Dun, dun, dun. You need 1 or 2?
Oh, this is
Just
thick.
1. Okay. What?
This is thick.
Uh-oh. Sorry.
We can't do this.
It's on single-sided, isn't it? It's single-sided. I think they printed it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
single-sided.
That's why. It just feels
That's why
thicker.
it's so thick, okay.
All right.
So we can't get this done tonight.
No. Well, we're not gonna get it done tonight, I don't think, anyway, because of the amount of information that's in here. All right, we're gonna be starting Isaiah chapter 8. Now, this is a continuation of chapter 7. You guys remember I said that last week or 2 weeks ago about the fact that it's kind of splits up in the middle of the chapter, and I'll let you know. Anyway, chapter 8 of Isaiah, verse 1 says, "Moreover, the Lord said unto me, Take thee a great roll, and write in it with a man's pen concerning," oh boy, here goes the name, Mahershala Hashbaz. Hashbaz, right? That's what a mouthful, right?
Yeah, they break it out.
Later, yeah, I do. Yeah.
Well, they break it out in mine. You see.
Mahershala
Shalal
Hashbaz.
Hashbaz.
Baz, right. Okay. Actually, I go into it in a little bit here, so you'll understand what that name means. When he says, "Moreover, the Lord said unto me," this begins the second section of this discourse. We just finished the first.
In addition to, or
Yeah, in addition to, this is
furthermore.
furthermore, okay, right.
And if that wasn't enough,
And this section will reach into the 7th verse of the next chapter of chapter 9, which I don't have on here yet, but it will be coming to you. And is nearly the same argument with the preceding being prophetical and containing matter both of comfort and reproof.
okay.
So this one's a little different, all right? I put a note there. This discourse may be divided into 2 parts. Now, the first part is the first 4 verses contains a confirmation and sign of the prediction concerning the sudden subversion of the kings of Syria and Israel. So this means that because of what they're doing, and if we go back to Isaiah chapter 7, you have to remember that God had sent him to that upper spring, and he's talking to the royal family still. And he's telling them all the stuff that happened in chapter 7, right? Now God is telling you need to write this down. It's going to be for future, right? Because these people laughed at him, basically. And they weren't going to change their mind because he refused God twice, right? You can have a miracle or you can't. Or you want a sign or a miracle. He said, no, I'm not going to tempt the Lord. Well, anyway. I don't know if the Lord asked me if I wanted to see a sign or a miracle. I'm going to tell him.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Say.
Both. Can you combine them?
Well, I've seen a lot of them as it is, but when you're offering me one, I gotta see.
It's going to be above and
It's
beyond
gonna
what we've
be
already
seen, right?
amazing.
Right, this is going to be cool. I got an iPhone. Can I take a picture?
I want to record it.
Record it.
Yeah, right. So anyway, okay, so you guys got the idea from chapter 7, right? And the second part is more fully and distinctly explains the purpose of God with respect both to the Israelites and Jews for the consolation of the pious and the terror of the impious and carnal among them. So the pious are the ones that believe, and the impious and carnal are the ones that are actually tempt God. Say, we don't need your help, we got this. Which is the king right now. Okay? All right, so it says, take thee a great roll. The word which is here translated roll more properly signifies a tablet, right? So the Chaldee renders it, those tablets are made of wood, metal, or stone for the purpose of writing on.
Like what Moses wrote.
Right. Now, at this time period, they did have scrolls. Even they were beginning to develop the papyrus scroll, right? And some of the scholars that I was reading think that this is the first mention of the written scroll of this time period, because Joseph, if you remember, was in Egypt, and they used the papyrus scrolls, or the scrolls from the cattails, to make their paper. And the Egyptians had scrolls, right? So they're thinking that what God is telling them is, you need to get one of those scrolls, those papers, and I want you to write on it with a man's pen. Or he would have said, to chisel it in, or to carve it. It wouldn't have been, he wouldn't have been specific about a man's pen, right?
Right.
All right, so I kind of have to go with that later, being
Right.
at the development of that papyrus or scroll, right? Does that make sense? All
Yeah,
right.
mine just says with an ordinary pen.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, and mine says write on it with ordinary characters.
and we're going to be getting into that.
So like
Mm-hmm.
normal layman's,
In
write it
layman
in layman's
Terms, so everybody would understand.
Yeah, don't be all fancy and use some weird dialect.
Okay.
Right, yeah, that type of thing, right?
Hear ye, hear ye.
And so take thee a great roll. The word which here more properly signifies tablet, anyway. And write in it with a man's pen. Now, that is in ordinary characters what the humblest can read. That's Habakkuk, 2:2.
I got it.
Habakkuk, I think it's how they pronounce it.
Habakkuk?
Habakkuk. That's it.
Habakkuk
2:2.
2:2.
Yeah.
And Jehovah answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tablets, that he may run that readeth it. That he may run that readeth it.
Means to understand it, yeah. Can run it through his mind. Does that make sense? Right. Okay. And
Write
then-
it so anybody can understand it.
Yes, exactly, right? So Hebrew, Enosh means a common man, right? Is contrasted with the upper ranks, and that's in Revelation 21:17. And you got Romans?
I got Romans.
Okay,
Okay, I got 21:17 now.
all right.
As soon as I find 17.
It's a little letter.
Yeah, well, they're small letters and numbers, so. The angle measured the wall using human measurement.
The angel.
And it was, oh, the angel, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And it was 144 cubits thick.
It was in human measurements.
Ah,
Human
yeah,
measurements, yeah.
see? The angel measured. He didn't need human measurements, did he?
Nope.
So he did it so people would understand.
Right.
Ah, just an example of it, okay? All right, and then you?
But if our unrighteousness brings out God's righteousness more clearly, what shall we say? That God is unjust in bringing this wrath on us? I am using a human argument.
So it has to be understood by all people, is what he's saying. I don't know if you noticed that the Bible is written so all people can understand it. I mean, thousands of different dialects and different varieties of.
The Old Testament?
Nah, not really. Not in the
Thank
King
you.
James, but because we have technology now to make it more understandable.
Back then, they understood
They
it.
understood it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But the more you read it, the easier then you start understanding.
Yes. Yeah.
But
was
even
gonna
then,
say
you
some-
only understand what he wants you to understand, because this is written for the human.
Right. But once you know what thee
Mhm.
and thou
Yes. What they
and-
mean.
and get to know and
And barely,
and
barely.
When you
unto-
understand
right.
barely, barely, and when you understand.
That's why I point those out too, though, so that it becomes common in our heads when we're reading a verse. It's like, okay, I got to pay attention now.
In that day.
There's going to be a test, right?
And it shall come to pass.
It shall come to
Right.
pass, right? And your babies will heal. It shall come to pass, right?
It's already predetermined.
Right.
It
See?
shall come to pass.
Right?
So, it helps you understand how they thought, and it's not much different than they just use different ways of putting language to put together, right?
Their dialect
Is
is
it
different.
And I put a note in here that says not in hieroglyphics. That would have been
Right.
Egyptian,
Right.
or they've been Sumerian. It's hieroglyphics, by the way, also. Okay.
Isn't there several
Oh yeah,
people
there's
that use
hieroglyphics. Yeah. Well, the caveman did the animals, you know. They did, right?
Yeah.
All right. So the object was that after the event, all might see it, that it had been predicted by Isaiah, and that's you find that in Psalms and Jeremiah. We don't have to read those. It's just.
Okay.
Oh, you want to?
I have it.
Okay. Psalms 41:6 and then Jeremiah 6.
And if he come to see me, he speaketh falsehood. His heart gathereth iniquity to itself. When he goeth abroad, he telleth it.
Okay.
So go and tell everybody.
Go and tell everyone. Yes. Right.
That it had been predicted.
Yeah, and Jeremiah 8:6 is basically the same thing. Once you understand it, you read it, then
So
you go
that
tell someone
all
else.
may read and understand it.
Yes. Right. Okay.
And we continue to do that. They keep updating the amplified
Yes.
version, the New King James version, the New
Mm-hmm.
International version, the easy to read version.
The hardest one I
So
have
everybody can
that
understand it.
I read is the Hebrew,
Yeah,
because its syntax is backwards,
in the Septuagint.
and the Greek. Yeah, the Greek's not too bad because I learned Latin so I could do pharmaceuticals.
That's
So
and
it's
medicine.
like Spanish.
It's like Spanish. It's written
Oh,
backwards. You
yeah.
read it from right to left instead of left to right. And
Yeah, you actually read it backwards.
Mhm.
The phrasing is, so English, everybody in the world will tell you, English's phrasing is backwards.
Right.
Yep. hmm
Every other, that's why if you grow up in France or in Spain, it's really easy for those kids to learn other languages
Yes.
because the, what is it, it's not the intonation, but where you put the verbs and the nouns
Yes.
is in the same place.
It's in the same.
We, the
Right.
West,
Right.
Does it different.
does it different. That's
Right.
why English is the hardest
Hardest
language.
language to learn because it's against the flow of what they've learned or been taught.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything else is against the flow of what I've been taught. So.
It's okay.
Right, for us.
Right.
Yeah. That's
Now, concerning Mahar Shahala Hashbaz, the son of the prophet Isaiah, on the tablet as though it were the heading of a proclamation or dedication, he was to write that,
Mhm.
right? And it says to, right? That mysterious name which we may render speed, plunder, haste, spoil. That's what his
Ooh.
name means,
Ooh.
right? Was for at least 9 months to be the enigma of Jerusalem. He was to at least, because, well, we'll get into it in a minute. He's telling him to write down his son's name at the top of it.
But that's not his son. That doesn't say it's his son.
Oh, it does.
Yeah,
In a
it
minute.
does.
It's coming.
It's coming.
Okay.
All right.
Or does, I'm sorry.
Well,
Right.
you did, that was a spoiler alert.
Yeah. I had to beef you up here a second.
He goes up to his wife.
Right, all right. And I look unto me, verse 2 says, and I look unto me, faithful witness, to record Uriah the priest and Zechariah the son of Jeberechiah. Jebberwocky. Jeberechiah.
Is-
That's what it says, right?
Jeberechiah.
How you spell it?
This is Jebrekai.
Jebrechiah, okay.
There you go.
I got it. I'll take that one. All right. Anyway, and I took unto me faithful witness to record. Now the speaker is still Jehovah.
Mhm.
The Greek lexicon, that's what LX means, right? And the other old versions have the imperative, and take for me is what he asked, right?
So if this was the New Testament, that would be all red.
Yes, exactly. That's what it's saying,
Okay.
okay? Which is addressed to the prophet, reads more naturally. Uriah the priest is mentioned in 2 Kings 16:10, and Zechariah is unknown, although the name occurs in the nearly contemporary notices of 2 Chronicles 26 and 2 Chronicles 29. That's a different Zechariah,
Mm-hmm.
but they think that he was the great grandfather
Mm.
of this man. This Zechariah was an elder at the time, an older man, because he had high prestige in the area of Jerusalem and Judea. So he wasn't a prophet, but he was a man that was well respected. Does that make sense? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want me to look any of those up?
You can do the
Second Kings.
2 Kings one, yeah.
Second Kings
16:10.
16
Yeah, no.
and 10.
I see Chronicles.
Yeah.
coming up, so.
And King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet
Mm-hmm.
Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, and saw the altar that was at Damascus. And King Ahaz sent to Uriah, Urijah, because there's a J in that one,
Right. Mm-hmm.
the priest, the fashion of the altar, and the pattern of it, according to all the workmanship thereof.
So he was copying the altar, and he wanted the priest to build one in Jerusalem. Right? Because he liked the way it looked. Ahaz, because it was the one in Damascus.
Plagiarism.
Yes, it's plagiarism. But also, it was shrouded in gold and had jewels embedded, and it was a kingly altar.
Showy.
Yes,
Materialistic.
It
Yes.
was earthly.
it was a desecration to the. Yeah, but
Oh, no, I'm up here.
up there. Okay,
I'm just reading ahead.
all right.
Okay, so these two guys, the Uriah
Mm-hmm.
and Zechariah, are
Mhm.
basically the notaries.
The notaries, yes, because.
And Zechariah
Mm-hmm.
is the reason why I figured that this was Jebekiah.
Right, Zechariah, Zebekiah, right,
Ooh.
that makes sense.
Mhm.
Right, so God is telling him, write this down, everything I'm gonna tell you,
Mm-hmm.
right? I want you to record it, right, by the priest of the king,
Mm-hmm.
right? And also by a well-known or wealthy merchant,
The son of a wealthy merchant.
yes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a one witness that would be biased. It would be witnessed by everyone of all levels. Does that make
Right.
sense? Okay, all right.
And not a king. Or
And not
prince.
a king, not a prince. Yes. Took that away, didn't he?
Mhm. Just pillars of the community.
Exactly. Right. Right. Exactly. Right.
Got it.
All right. So as I put there, it was only found in Chronicles and places, right? All right. So note these would be persons of unquestionable reputation. That's on the next page, by the way. Yeah, you got it. Okay. Who should bear witness that the following name and prophecy were written and published by me according to God's command? That's
Me
what
being Isaiah.
Isaiah. Yes.
Okay.
All right. So God is speaking it. Isaiah is writing it, and God's called two people to witness it. Isaiah didn't have to go get him, did he? He called them. They show up where he's at. I'm like, okay, there's God's plan in the whole thing, right? He's provided everything. Already he's already called them. Even before he spoke all this.
So they just rolled up there to get a drink of water or something.
Mm-hmm. And he says, can you witness when I'm ready?
Just happened to be at the right place at the right time.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
God's plan, right?
Hmm.
All right.
It's funny how that
Are you with that
happens.
one, huh? You okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just have to keep breaking your.
You're breaking my,
word down.
yeah, I'll let you say it this time.
No, I'm not going to say it. I have to break it down so.
Okay, verse number 3 says, and I went unto the prophetess, and she conceived and bare a son. Then said the Lord to me, call his name.
Meir Shalal Hashbaz,
There you go, right? Which means what?
which means
Isn't that the
Haste.
flunker?
Speed,
Plunder.
Something
speed,
spoil.
plunder,
speed,
haste,
thunder,
spoil.
haste,
Yeah.
and spoil.
Right.
I got the spoil.
You got
I got the haste
Haste.
because it's hash.
Yeah.
Haste.
Haste, right?
Haste.
Speed.
Mm-hmm. Now, why would God want him named that way?
Because he's getting ready
Because
to.
he's going to devastate things.
This child shall live through all of this.
Yeah, he's getting ready to do some stuff and
That's
take
why
some
his
names.
name is the way it is.
Mm-hmm. Did you know he just gave the people a time period? If she conceived, how many months is it going to be before she bears a child?
9.
9 months.
And then
Up
how long
to-
until he's.
Well, he's got 2 children coming, right? So there's a possibility of 18 months,
Oh yeah.
20 months, to 3 years.
But when did he go unto the prophetess, though?
As it would be as soon as he had finished writing all of this down. Okay?
Mm.
which he would have recorded. So they figured within 3 to 4 months that she conceived. Okay, now the word may have been, and it says, and I went unto the prophetess. The word may have been given by courtesy as a prophet's wife as such, right? They would call her a prophetess. Elsewhere, however, in the case of Deborah, Judges 4 and Huldah, 2 Chronicles, it implies prophetic gifts. Even if you go back to Miriam, Moses' sister, or Aaron's sister, excuse me, she was a prophetess, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're not sure if see, there's no record that was she really a prophetess, because she agreed with Isaiah. God may have already spoke to her like he spoke to Mary, and then he spoke to Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
Can it be both? And that's what some of these biblical scholars are thinking too.
So why don't they just say begot like they did in the beginning of the Bible? Why are they going to change it?
The language changed.
I guess.
Right.
So
Well,
the amplified
big
version.
difference-
Yeah, right.
but
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Go
the
ahead.
begot is from the father's side. Abraham begat,
Yeah.
Joseph begat. It doesn't say Mary begat.
No.
Mary conceived and
Oh, the
brought
prophetess
forth.
can see. Okay.
So it says that identifies it as the female side. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It gives it
The prophet
Okay.
is conceived.
right.
Right. Okay.
So that child would have been
So she gave him a son instead of him making himself a son.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny that Amplified
Exactly.
said, so I approached.
yeah.
And mine says that I made love to.
Oh, it
Right.
actually does. See,
Uh-huh.
that would be easy to follow. But
Easy to follow.
Wait, if he only approached her, how did they have a kid?
Then,
Well,
then I made love
you
to
know,
the prophetess, and she conceived and gave birth to a son.
Yeah.
Does that change any when you read it between Hebrew and Greek, as far as begat or?
It changes in the Greeks were more, I hate to say this word, liberal.
Okay.
I hate to say that word.
Yeah,
But they were.
yeah, they
Because
were.
they're
Yeah.
more showy, they're more materialistic people.
Yes.
And you can even see that in some of today.
Mm-hmm.
Because you'll see them walking around with those big heavy chains on.
Yes.
You know, look at me kind of thing, showy.
Yeah.
They're very showy, materialistic.
But-
But anybody
Liberal.
can be like that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's very common with them.
Yes. They're very, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, all right.
They still
So-
think that begat is more along the lines of trying to do a lineage,
A lineage for a
or
father.
ancestry or something
Right.
like
Right.
that. Where this is talking about a specific person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it. That
Conception.
makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because they do have like our language is very small.
Yes,
Right,
it is.
it is.
It's very
'Cause
short.
they'll have like 20 different words
Right.
that we
Meaning.
would use one word for.
Right.
Yes.
We have
Right.
one word that has 5 meanings.
Right,
Yes.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. Like love, they have like 20 words, whatever. So.
Even words that are just pronounce them different, so they say something like tear and tear.
Right.
To me, for me, if that was me, that would be bizarre for God to show me that I'm going to have a kid. That's like a lot of pressure.
Right.
Think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But didn't he help Sarah conceive?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but if Isaiah is truly forgiven by God, which he was touched with the stone on his
Right,
mouth
right.
by the
Oh yeah.
right, I
Mhm.
think he fully believes. Oh, all right, let's go. But he has to write the scroll before he has the child.
Right. Right. That's that's what.
That's like, ding. Oh no, I got another mouth to feed.
Stretch it out.
Yeah. I'm gonna go all over Judea before I go back home.
So that'd be like me writing down, announcing to the world, my son Brandon is gonna have a daughter, and it's written down, and then okay, son,
You
go
think- you-
bring forth the daughter.
You could actually write prophecy.
Right.
I'm just saying.
And
Holly might
right
kill you.
with-
But you understand what I'm saying,
Yes.
right? That's God grants what
It
you ask for.
doesn't say that he wrote down the prophecy. It says he wrote down the name.
Well, yeah, he wrote down the name, and it's at the top of it. It says to. If you go back, it says.
Yeah, it doesn't say he writes that part down. You're right, but still, obviously God tells him because it says, and then the Lord called me and said, "Call that his name."
Mm-hmm. You got to remember this. All this that's been written down has already been given to Isaiah.
Right.
He already has it here. He's been telling this to how many people now?
It just has never been written.
Exactly, right? And we'll get into why in just a second here.
Okay.
Right. Therefore, we may think the prophet and his wife as having been drawn together by united thoughts and counsels.
Right.
They're both talking to God, right?
Yeah. So they were both told, hey,
In
you
contrast
guys
with
need
the
to do this.
right, and this is in contrast with the celibate life of Jeremiah, and the miseries of Hosea's marriage. Remember
Right.
Hosea, right? And the sudden bereavement of Ezekiel. Ezekiel's wife passed away just as he became a prophet.
Right.
So he was.
So he wouldn't be distracted.
Yeah.
So apparently Isaiah's prophetess does not distract him, but
No,
helps him.
but helps him. Yeah, she's like,
That's probably why she's called the prophetess.
yes, she probably has her own gifts and of foresight. Well, if God spoke to Mary through an angel and he spoke to Joseph,
Why
this
do you
is
have problems with Joseph?
I do. You,
He's a nice guy.
I know he is. He should have got more coverage. Anyway, he was a carpenter. Come on.
I know.
I know you'd appreciate that one.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So, then said the Lord to me, call his name, and we did. And this command by the Lord is to Isaiah at the conception of his wife with child. And the name is, anyway, to Hasten's booty. Booty? I don't think that's supposed to be that one.
Speed the spoil.
Marshall.
Did you say booty, really?
That's what it says. Oh, well,
Hasten
booty at the time
speed
was
the
be what?
spoil. Yeah, that would be loot.
Loot,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Right, the plunder.
Plunder.
Yes.
Yeah, but actually,
Speed and the
in
spoils.
in the Hebrew, it's booty, right? A bounty. Anyway,
Arg.
arg. There was pirates in the time.
See, I
Come
was
on.
going to say, oh, he was even popular with the ladies.
There you go. There you go. You guys will never forget this one, will you? We had God talking about
His
booty.
name was Mayor something Boz, but
Right.
they called him
Yeah.
Hasten Booty.
Hasten booty.
Okay, it was
Just
given
show
by.
this part to the whiskey runners and they'll all be here.
Yeah, right. There you go, right? So this thing was given by divine direction to indicate that Damascus and Samaria were soon to be plundered by the king of Assyria. 8:14. So
Want me to look it up?
yeah, go ahead and read that one. I think that was important.
Got the others after that.
I don't know what time we got.
I don't know.
8:37.
Well, we got to get through verse 4.
Jeremiah
We gotta get through verse 4. Yeah,
8,
I'm sorry, 8:14.
14.
Yeah.
I was scrolling too fast. There's too many words in between. Okay. Why do we sit still? Assemble yourselves and let us enter into the fortified cities, and let us be silent there. For Jehovah our God hath put us to silence, and given us water of gall to drink, because we have sinned against Jehovah.
Mm-hmm. So that's the you have to drink the bitter water,
Salty water, right?
salty water, gall, yeah, because of your own sins, your own iniquities. You did this. You brought this upon yourself. And that's what that is referencing. The spoils, the haste and the plunder.
The gallbladder.
Yeah, like gall. Yeah, it's bitter, right? So I put a special note in here. It says 3+ times in the Bible the Lord has appointed a conception, and in 2 of these a unique name assigned.
John,
John the Baptist. huh?
Jesus,
and who else?
and Mayor.
And who?
Mayor.
Mayor. Okay. And his own son. You shall call him Emmanuel, right?
Jesus.
Yes, she said Jesus. Emmanuel.
Yeah,
Said-
right. Right. Did you? Well, anyway, as we go through this next one, it'll be.
Is there another one?
For before the child shall have knowledge to cry, my father and my mother, the riches of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria shall be taken away before the king of Assyria. Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how old would a child have to be to acknowledge and know
8.
to call mom and dad?
Oh, like two.
Yeah.
Like two.
1.5, 2,
Yeah.
depending.
You got-
on,
you got a
if
little
they
one at
have
your house.
older.
They didn't name them until later. Though,
Yeah, right.
They
Yeah,
did
but
not
they
leave
would
them
say
till they were
mom and
8.
mom and dad. But
By two.
if they had siblings, they would say it sooner.
Sooner, right, right, okay. So the time period is not very far, is it?
Mm-mm.
It actually gives you a time period from,
In like
from
2
Somewhere
years from
between
now.
Yeah,
nine,
less than-
9 years
No.
and 2 months, 2 years and 9 months later.
so it's not a very long period. This is coming down,
9 months.
right, to 2 years.
To
To
2
2 years and 9 months.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So,
Within
given
the
that
next
they
3
had,
years.
if they had older siblings, they talk earlier.
Quit earlier, right. Right.
in
If
less
they're
than
the
3
first
years,
one.
you're out of here.
You're
Yeah,
done.
pretty much.
Darn, we got 18 here.
Instead of a 90-day eviction notice, we're going to give you a 36-month.
Yep. You're done. Sound like a presidency, huh? It's an eviction notice. That's what every election
Can we
is, right?
shorten that?
All right, yeah, we were trying, yeah.
Can we have a premature child?
Yeah, we could. Anyway.
We want to replace
It says,
stuff.
for before, this establishes a time period most likely within a year, right? Well, a year after his birth. It can be as early as a year,
Mm-hmm.
So it could be
Yeah.
2
18
years to,
Yeah.
18 months.
18 months, right, okay? So,
That's what I'm aiming for.
the child shall have knowledge to cry, father and mother, my father, my mother. This is to speak and to know his parents, which is within a space of 2 years, right? And this agrees with the other prophecy in Isaiah 7:16 back in the earlier part of that chapter, that it was coming fast upon them, and it was not being delayed. You know, this was going to happen soon, right? Some of the other prophecies are later, okay? The riches of
For
Damascus.
before the boy knows enough to reject the wrong and choose the right,
Right.
the land of the two
Remember
kings
that
you
one?
dread will be laid waste.
Yes. Eat the good food and not the evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the prophecy, right? The riches of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria shall be taken away. That the kingdoms of Syria and Israel, here is signified by the two capital cities, shall be stripped of their wealth and power as they were by Tilgath-Pileser within the time here limited, and that was 2 Kings 15:29. You read it earlier, right? So now we got time periods. It's amazing if you really study the Bible, he'll give you,
Mm-hmm.
but you've got to study it to get it, pull it out, is what I did, right? Now, before the king of Syria, that would be in his presence, and by himself and his forces in Scripture used, that is said to be before a man, right? Which is in or is put into a man's power, as Genesis 13:9 and 20:15 says. He said to Abraham, you know,
Genesis is the first book of the Bible. We can find
Right.
it in a hurry.
13:9.
Yeah, it kills me how God never says 2 years from now.
Well, because that's man's
Because
time.
that's
yeah, I
man's
know.
time.
But it's always just clever how they come up with the timeline.
She's got Genesis.
Well, before this child will say my mother and my father. It's almost like Jesus in his parables.
Yes.
I wonder where Jesus, like father, like son, right?
The apple doesn't fall
All far from the
the
tree, right? They're
13:9.
one.
And it's also specific that even though this is his name, he's not the one that takes the riches away. So somebody else did.
Mm-hmm. That's a fact.
So in his presence and by himself and his forces in Scripture,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, it said
So
be
number
before
9
man.
says, "Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left."
Mhm.
Before you.
Genesis 20:15.
You got 2015?
I've got it
Right.
not quite under my finger.
That's close.
And Abimelech said, "My land is before you. Live wherever you like."
Mm-hmm. Before you. Again, it's before man, right? So the man gets to choose, right? And king of Syria was going to choose to take all of it, right? All right. So, men are said to be smitten before their enemies when they are smitten by them as the numbers, and that's just wars, okay?
Okay.
Are off elsewhere. Others refer this phrase to the ancient custom of conquerors of sending or carrying their spoils before them into their own country. Do you remember David and them would come back from the battles? And he would send the spoils before him, and he would come riding in, and the people would be cheering because they had gathered into the city, and they saw the 1,000 or the 100 heads or the 300 heads of the enemy that David had taken, right? And what a great warrior he is, and that's what tipped Saul off, right? He made him mad because he was losing power. David was becoming more powerful than he was because of his conquering in battle. And they, from this time forward, they still do it, right? All right.
Okay, so that was the first 4 verses.
Yeah, right.
Which is
So,
the confirmation and sign of the
and we're going to
prediction.
stop right there.
Yeah, the next part, it's a good stuff.
Subversion
Yeah.
of the kingdoms of Syria and
Yeah,
Israel.
right.
The mini flood.
Yeah, we'll start with 5. I thought that's
And do you know what next Wednesday is?
the 31st.
Try again.
First.
First.
The first day of September.
Okay. Yay. It's a
And then the
good.
following Monday is a holiday.
Yeah. Oh, is that what you're planning?
Just an
I see.
FYI.
All right. But anyway, okay, we're going to start there.
And then that Wednesday is our meeting.
Yep.
Have you heard of, here, I'll turn this off first.
Yeah. Okay. You going to pray out?
Yes, Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this Bible study, Lord. We thank you that you gifted and blessed Dan the time and the commitment and knowledge to put this together for us so that we can all understand it, Lord. And we just ask that you be all with all of us this week. We meet again on Sunday, and we ask for traveling mercies for Lisa and I as we go on a little mini vacation. We say all these things in Jesus'